Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about how you can get more clarity on your supply chain in terms of security risk. So this video is going to be for supply chain managers or GRC managers that have a supply chain that they're not 100% sure on, or where the process feels very overwhelming. This video will give you some tips on how to improve your processes around that. So imagine you finally mastered security within your organization, you feel quite comfortable, and you have processes in place to make sure you're constantly monitoring your security as well. And then, with supply chain risk always evolving and always being on the rise, you don't feel comfortable with how your security is in terms of third parties. The first step you need to do is to get a full view as to what you have currently. So who are your suppliers, what do they supply, how critical are they to your operations? So the first step you need to do is do some discovery. So look across the organization, talk to sales, talk to procurement, understand who provides services to your company, what they provide, how critical it is for them to provide in terms of keeping the business going as well. And by doing this, you're understanding not only what is within your reach, but also if there's like some sort of breach or some sort of disruption, you're aware of who you need to contact to reinstate services as well. In order to do this discovery, some companies are quite good. They've got a full list of their suppliers, let's say within procurement or let's say HR. Other companies is a bit more dispersed, so you can always request some invoices. This will be a lengthy process, but it's just a way to understand where you're connected to other people. So look at your CMDB. If you have one in place, that's also a good way of understanding everything you have within your organization. And once you've got like a good view, if you're lucky enough to have a tool, put everything into a tool. So like your bit sites or whatever you have, in order to have a look at everything you have. If not, a simple spreadsheet will work. It will set you up for the next step. So the next step, step 2, is to tier your suppliers. So once you have everything in a spreadsheet, the next thing you can do is start assessing them in terms of criticality. So the first bucket will be critical. So you can't operate without them. If you don't have them in place, your business can't run. So whether that's your website, your payment processes, whatever that is. The second one will be also quite crucial, but you can go, let's say, half a day without it, so you can survive a little bit of time without them. And then your third tier will be your non-critical. So imagine the people that deliver coffee. I mean, coffee is essential, but people that deliver your coffee, maybe your water provider, that sort of thing. When you're deciding on the tiers, look at it in terms of business criticality. So do we need it to run the business, or if the data they hold for us was leaked, how big a problem it is? So look at it like that, and based on those two, decide on various buckets. And then the next step is to monitor them. So if you've done the first step correctly, this will determine how stringent and how rigorous you are when it comes to monitoring different suppliers. So your tier 1 suppliers, you need to be very, very extensive. You need to understand where they're holding your data, how they are managing their security. You need to see their security certificates. You need to be very, very rigorous in how you screen them. And then on top of that, you need to have regular touch points with them. I would recommend for tier 1 at least once a year. More than that might not be realistic in terms of doing it properly and also not irritating them. And then the next set of suppliers, you can decide, let's say you're in the middle, you could decide 18 months, you'll do a security questionnaire. And then on top of that, you might decide to, I don't know, check in with them periodically just to make sure that everything is fine. And then the last ones, you can just screen them. So for example, you can look at their reputation, get some lightweight certificates. They don't need to fill in a questionnaire, for example, but just to have confidence that they're managing security in a way that is acceptable to you based on the data that is held. So the reason I said that you need to make it proportionate to the data they're holding is because the actual time it takes to monitor them in terms of checking for breaches or having a contact to reach out to in the case of a breach or anything like that, you don't want to be doing that for someone that doesn't hold any crucial data, or someone that let's say a supplier that you use them, but maybe like once a month, as opposed to every single day, on the hour, within like every single minute you need them. I'm going to flag some challenges you might experience during this process. So the first one being time. depending on the length of the questionnaires and the amount of suppliers you have, let's say you have 40 tier 1 suppliers, it's very, very time consuming. So depending on the size of your team will determine how easy it is for you to work through that information. And then secondly, access to breach information. It's mainly through tools that you find out there's been a breach. That's probably the fastest way to do it. Otherwise, it's a case of setting up maybe Google alerts or something like that for each of the suppliers that you'd like to monitor for, which again can be quite time consuming. And then lastly, I'd say finding out all the suppliers that are currently operating within your business. There's a challenge of shadow IT. So where there are tools being used in production that haven't been approved by security, so there's no awareness of it, or two, companies that don't keep a record of everything, every single tool that's being used. So that also poses a challenge when it comes to monitoring your supply chain. And then lastly, I would say the biggest tip I would give is making sure that within security contracts there are clauses. So normally you renew every 2 years or every year, let's say, agreements with suppliers, making sure that there's a clause within the security contract, within the supplier contract, sorry, to say that you're able to question them on their security to make sure that it's something that's embedded within the contract. So that would be something to raise with maybe procurement or sales to make sure that you have the right to do that. And then to conclude, my call to action today will be to get an inventory of all the suppliers that you have. So I feel like that's a great starting point. Go throughout the business, understand exactly who's supplying to you and what they're supplying. So let's say on Excel, column 1, company name, column 2, purpose. So by listing out the purpose, you get an understanding of how critical they are to your operations. And it can also be quite clarifying as a company if you realise that you've got 3 or 4 different suppliers that supply the same service. It could highlight an opportunity to consolidate the different suppliers that you have for things. So that's all I have for today. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe.